Hey, what's up guys? We're going to be ranking every evolution in Clash Royale so you can determine which ones are trash and the ones to stay away from, and the ones that are worth leveling up. By far the worst evolution in the game is the Goblin Drill. Coming in at number 32, you would never play this thing if you're given other options. Most Goblin Drill decks are going to be playing Evolved Snowball, Evolved Bomber, Evolved Firecracker, or if they want to play more defensive, Evolved Ice Spirit and Evolved Cannon for defense so then the opponents can't break through. Basically, the Goblin Drill used to do a lot of spawn-in damage, poop out a lot more goblins, and now it does no spawn-in damage when it's moving around the arena, and then also spawns less goblins. So there's really no reason to play this over the Evolved Bomber and Firecracker that will give you more chip damage, and if you want to play more aggressive, it's still difficult to get value out of it because everyone's using counters to Evolved Witch that also counter the Evolved Goblin Drill. The amount of times that people are going to be playing Valkyrie and Mega Knight in the meta makes this card completely useless. The next worst evolution at number 31 is the Evolved Wizard. It's not a terrible card to play, there's just better options. For instance, I'd rather run an unevolved card like an Archer Queen, or maybe use an Evolved Dark Goblin if I'm running a bait deck, or potentially something that has longer range or more damage like an Evolved Witch, which has more versatility because it will survive longer. It's just no point in really running the Evolved Wizard when there are better evolution options. I will say there's one caveat. If you're a free-to-play player, it's actually a pretty good evolution because of the spell shield. It allows you to survive fireballs or spells that would typically one-shot it. For instance, if you've got a level 14 Witch or an under-leveled Evolved Witch, even though it's one of the best evolutions of the game, it's still going to die to an over-leveled fireball, whereas the Evolved Wizard will survive. So that is a lot better if you have lower-level cards. Flashing through in the 30th spot is the Evolved P.E.K.K.A. The regular P.E.K.K.A. used to be phenomenal. It finished number 1 in the world, then they buffed it and gave it an evolution, and it was the best evolution in the game for months. And then it just got nerfed and nerfed and nerfed, especially with the range nerf. So now the P.E.K.K.A. can't hit the tower as reliably, and then it can get pushed off of the tower. That means that, you know, the Evolved P.E.K.K.A. isn't that much of a threat on offense compared to it used to be. And then it got a bit of a buff recently in the balance changes with a 13% heal extra for everything that it kills. That's going to be nice, but in a meta where people are running Witch and a lot of good distractions, even like Royal Recruits, Evolved P.E.K.K.A. just isn't that good, so it's not something that's worth playing. We're going to have to wait for Evolved Witch and Royal Recruits to not be in the meta for this card to be strong again, and maybe get some of its range back. The Mortar Evolution is just simply hard to fit in your deck. A lot of times if you're running Mortar Evolution, you're going to be running decks without a big spell, typically like Mortar Bait with Arrows and Skeleton King, and because Evolved Witch is so strong, you're going to have to fit a Lightning in that deck, and it doesn't really work that well. So Mortar is at the bottom of the barrel, literally just not played by many people. Next up is Evolved Musketeer, which again is just outclassed by a lot of other stuff like Evolved Witch, Archer Queen, Dark Goblin, Firecracker. I just wouldn't play this card in any of my decks unless I was using a Balloon Cycle deck and I need to break down a building, or try to snipe an anti-air card that was about to ruin my day. It's niche but strong and just not played that much. The Evolved Electro Dragon truly got executed by the meta. It's unfortunate that Lightning is played in almost every deck to counter the Evolved Witch, so that means that the Electro Dragon is just crushed by default. It's not necessarily that reliable because you need a tank deck with it, and because you're going to have a slower card cycle intrinsically, you're not going to be able to outcycle your opponent's Lightning. It's just not a good option right now. I gotta say, it would shoot up a ton of ranks if Lightning was one of the most played spells in the game. Next is the Evolved Goblin Giant, which got nerfed by proxy since Rage, Royal Recruits, and Evolved P.E.K.K.A. all got nerfs. So a ton of those bridge spam decks that were skillless with Goblin Giant just aren't as good, and the Goblin Giant itself got nerfed multiple times. So Shrek Boy got sad and just isn't as powerful on offense as he used to be, especially with his support cards not being as strong. The 25th best evolution is the Evolved Tesla. This thing finished number 1 in the world with Expo recently, and became a bit of a better option ever since the double nerf to it, where it used to do 2 Evolved Tesla shocks and now it only does 1. It was one of the worst evolutions in the game, but Tesla got a bit of a buff recently, and also with the Cannon evolution getting a bit of a nerf and some other of the defensive options being worse, people started to rely on the Evolved Tesla a little bit more as an anti-air answer, and it's really reliable since it has the shockwave. So if the opponent spams too much stuff into it, you essentially get that massive splash damage to clean things up, slow battle rams and other spam down, and it's just an okay option, but very overpowered with Expo. The next best evolution is Evolved Barbarians. In a meta where everyone's running Lightning, these things are a brick wall. Opponents have to have Fireball to break through, and if they don't, the Evolved Barbarians will hard counter their deck. If you're playing into Giants, Battle Rams, Ram Riders, Bridge Spam decks with even Mega Knight or P.E.K.K.A., the Evolved Barbarians got you covered. They're especially strong in Bridge Spam decks with Elixir Collector because if the opponent fireballs on the Barbarians, you get a free Elixir Collector, and then you start to get a huge Elixir advantage. They're also one of the most reliable cards in Lava Hound decks. Great card to upgrade, but you need Fireball Bait in your deck like Skeleton Dragons or Elixir Collector to make it work. Played in the most popular deck in the game, the Evolved Battle Ram is number 23 on the list. If the opponent's down Elixir and forced to counter with suboptimal cards, they're screwed. The ram pushes everything out of the way and destroys bait cards. But if the opponent's got stuns like Ice Spirit, Log, or Snowball, it's not going to be the best card in the game. It also only really fits in bridge spam decks. Still a solid option if your bridge spam deck needs more power on offense. Next is the Evolved Firecracker. If this thing doesn't die because the opponent can't use arrows on it or they don't have arrows in their deck, it's one of the most obnoxious cards in the game. Half of mid-ladder plays it, so most people will have arrows or good answers to it. But if you build a deck like Royal Recruits Skeleton Barrel or Royal Recruits with Wall Breakers, and the opponent has to use spells on those cards instead of the Firecracker, you can get pretty absurd value. It's just way worse in Hog Rider cycle decks at the moment because a lot of people are running arrows. So to make the Evolved Firecracker deck work, you either have to outcycle your opponent's arrows with a super fast cycle and then get multiple of them on the map, or you're gonna have to go and play a deck with multiple bait cards. It does put in work against witches and support cards that are scary right now, so it is a good option depending on your deck. The Evolved Dark Goblin is ranked number 21 out of the 32 evolutions. This card is a powerhouse. If the opponent can't log or remove it, it can actually disintegrate an entire push. I can't tell you how many times I've ran fast cycle bait decks and had an Evolved Dark Goblin clean up the entire 12 elixir push that my opponent spammed for 3 elixir. The downside of the card is you can pretty much only play this in log bait decks if you're trying to mix it into a Hog Rider deck or maybe something that's a little bit higher elixir average cost. The opponent's just gonna log your Dark Goblin, you're gonna feel like a fool. And it's gonna be a -1 trade too. It works really well in log bait decks because the opponent can't afford to log the Dark Goblin or they're gonna die to Goblin Barrels, Skeleton Barrels, Suspicious Bushes. There's just too much bait for the opponent to ever log it. Oh, and it's one of the best cards in the game for duels because the opponent can't have log in all of their decks. The silly thing about it is how long the poison survives after the Dark Goblin dies. I can't tell you how many times I've killed a boss bandit just because my Dark Goblin got that remnants of poison and it punishes the opponent and makes them cry as their units die. Next up is the Evolved Skeletons, which got a huge nerf. This card used to be one of the top 2 or 3 evolutions in the game that was practically an auto-include in all of your cycle decks. Now everyone's just running Evolved Ice Spear and Evolved Cannon. The Evolved Skeletons are just an afterthought. For instance, if you want to run like an Elixir Golem deck and you have Skeleton King and you're kind of hoping that you get to multiply your skeletons, even if they die, you're going to be able to fuel a good Skeleton King ability. It makes sense then. But for most cycle decks, it's just not it anymore. The skeletons don't attack fast enough, so they can't multiply as reliably. And also having 1 and 2 split means that, you know, that one skeleton that barely survives and locks onto the tower, that doesn't happen near as often. So I would say that Evolved Skeletons have really fallen from grace. They used to be one of the best evolutions in the game, and now they're kind of just mid. The Evolved Bomber is the ranked 19 evolution, which used to have a double bounce doing double the damage that it's doing right now. So it easily was top 5 evolutions in the game at that point, and everyone was playing it in all their decks. Now you kind of have to think about playing it maybe in a bridge spam deck or a giant graveyard deck where you're trying to get some damage if the opponent has a P.E.K.K.A. to kill your giant and your graveyard skeletons are getting killed. The Evolved Bomber can bounce onto the P.E.K.K.A., hit the tower, and reliably give you enough damage to win the game. So it works in a lot of situations where people are discounting it because it used to be so much better. But if you look at it in isolation, it's a good win condition. It only costs 2 elixir, and having a 2 elixir win condition is pretty cool. Every time that the opponent wants to remove it, they're going to have to arrows it for a negative elixir trade, opposed to a Dark Goblin where, you know, they can get a positive elixir trade into it, into a log. They can't even log to kill your bomber. It's also a good card to cycle too. For 2 elixir, you're not going to get punished for dropping it too often, and at the same time, it has splash damage, making it a worthwhile card to drop along the way towards your evolution. Next at number 18 is the Giant Snowball. This thing bounces things back an absurd 4.5 tiles and slows everything down for 4 seconds. That's a lot on defense if the opponent's spamming a ton of stuff in double or triple elixir, big P.E.K.K.A. pushes, anything with Witch. You're able to wipe it off the map, clean up the skeletons, and throw it back quite a bit so then you have more time to respond to everything else. This is especially useful when you're playing against Giant Graveyard because then the Giant is going to get off the map, so then your tower starts to target the skeletons, removing their tank. It's also really good if you're playing a balloon deck where your opponent's dropping cards like a Mega Minion or an Inferno Dragon to kill your balloon. And you're like, nah, not today. Your tower's going to be targeting my miner. Well, guess what? The Giant Snowball is going to wipe your units away, make sure that you have to refocus and retarget back onto my stuff. And it's by far one of the most frustrating cards to face when you're playing against Goblin Drill, and they got the Goblin Drill on the tower, and they just freaking snowball all of your stuff back across the tower, behind your tower. Meanwhile, the Goblins are just ransacking everything. So one of the best cards in the game right now on offense with Goblin Drill, and it is played by a ton of pro players. Also, the versatility on defense against bridge spam makes it a valuable card to have in your deck. The Evolved Lumberjack is now the 17th best evolution. It's fallen from one of the best, if not the best, all the way down because now it requires an extra evolution cycle. So 2 evolutions, the 3rd one's evolved. It will still spring together a Evolved Lumberjack that the opponent can't really kill. So if it gets near the tower, it is going to be a big problem for the opponent. It is something that doesn't last as long as it used to because the rage duration kind of got decreased, and that made the card way easier to deal with. But at the same time, if you have a bridge spam deck or a lumberjack balloon deck and the opponent is down elixir, this can be a tower killer and a win condition all by itself. It's mostly played in lumberjack balloon decks, and it's more niche than it was before, fitting in almost every deck before its nerf. Number 16 has to be my beloved Royal Recruits. This card is one of the easiest cards to play because you don't have to worry about placements. You just drop them in the back and you're able to unleash a devastating push on both sides that the opponent will have to worry about. The better you get, the worse they get though. At higher levels of skill, people have played against this card so much that they identify ways of countering it. At lower levels of play, they might misplace a building, let one Royal Recruit charge on through, and then it can just be game over. For instance, if they let a fly machine snipe a building and then the Royal Recruit just starts to go charged at them, a lot of times they're going to lose a precious card like a Musketeer or a Dark Goblin, and then everything can spiral out of control and win the game in your favor. The Evolved Royal Giant is the 15th best evolution in the game. It's not the knockback damage that it does, it's the fact that the knockback stops the opponent's units like Lumberjacks, Elite Barbarians, or Barbarians from killing the Royal Giant because they can't attack it. If you've got a monk in front of your Evolved Royal Giant so your opponent can't damage it down with cannons or archer queens, and then you have the Evolved Royal Giant knocking back Barbarians and nothing can ever really attack it, it's practically invulnerable. Especially when you have Evolved Hunter to lock up P.E.K.K.A.s and Inferno Dragons, or Lightning to kill cards that would be scary like an Evolved Witch. Royal Giant Evolution feels like an immortal with the right support, and especially in this meta, it's one of the most complained about cards in Clash. Evolved Zap is one of the most underrated cards in the game. Because it's a spell that doesn't seem to do a lot of damage, people don't understand how to play it at its full potential. If you combo it with Goblin Curse, it can kill Barbarians and Flying Machine and a lot of Fireballies. For just 2 elixir, it also gives you positive elixir trades by itself into Evolved Dark Goblins, Princesses, Firecrackers. Some of the most annoying long-range cards in the game, you get positive elixir trades and you'll erase those higher elixir evolutions immediately. And if you're using a beatdown deck like Giant or Goblin Giant into an Inferno Tower, Mighty Miner, or Inferno Dragon, having the double zap is a huge clutch so you can get more damage on offense. The 13th best evolution in the game is Evolved Archers, specifically played with Royal Recruits and Elixir Golem decks, but also allowed to be played with an Expo or other cycle decks. If you split them up, you'll practically always get positive elixir trades. If your opponent arrows one side, then they'll probably have to drop other spells on the other. And if the opponent has to deal with Elixir Golem pushes on both sides, with an Elixir Golem on one end and a Goblin Machine on the other, huge amount of health tanking for the Evolved Archer. If one Evolved Archer gets on the tower, it's an instant good game. The amount of damage that they can do from a distance because they amplify their damage the further they are away, that means they'll deal devastating damage if they get a tower lock, basically being the sole way to win games in a lot of situations. If I was starting a new account and I got Evolved Archers, I would be super happy. The 12th best evolution is the Evolved Goblin Cage. It's hilarious when it eats up a P.E.K.K.A., Golem, or Electro Giant, and the opponent's just like, wait, where'd my 8 or 7 elixir go? And then you get a Goblin Cage Brawler counter pushing. It's phenomenal against any beatdown push or bridge spam, so it just gives huge positive elixir trades that are practically unfair. It has to be this high on the list. There's a massive misconception with Mega Knight. Everyone thinks it's one of the best cards in the game, but in reality, the evolution completely carries it. It's the 11th strongest evolution. By itself, it is able to knock back a Golem and counter it, and if the opponent has Golem Night Witch, all you have to do is throw in a zap, and you can counter a 12 elixir investment with 10, and get a Mega Knight counter push. It's phenomenal against decks like Electro Giant. The Electro Giant used to be able to stun it and stop the Mega Knight from knocking it back, but basically any beatdown deck that isn't Lovehound is in fear of the evolved Mega Knight. Also on offense, it's way more reliable to knock the opponent's units back, sometimes disrupting the attack animation like a P.E.K.K.A. so it can't get on top of your Ram Riders or other win conditions. The Evolved Mega Knight is to be feared on defense and offense, and it's allowed to be played by bad players because it's easy to extract value out of. Number 10 is the Executioner Evolution. When cards get too close, they get knocked back, and the Executioner deals more damage. It's particularly good in a meta where people are playing Royal Recruits, Evolved Witch, and a lot of bait cards. But right now, it's got to be a top 10 evolution. And decks that are using it with Hog Rider, Balloon, or P.E.K.K.A. are receiving way higher ratings than they typically would in prior metas. This is where the evolutions start to get unfair. The Evolved Wall Breakers are practically impossible to counter for a positive elixir trade. If your opponent has a cannon or a tombstone, sure, they're going to get a -1 trade. But a lot of times your opponent will not have the best answers in cycle. If they drop Barbarians, even if they're evolved, they'll die to the Evolved Wall Breakers practically. They won't be able to get any counter push, and they'll feel like a fool dropping an evolution that is also 5 elixir into 2. If the opponent is dropping things like a Mother Witch or a Magic Archer, they'll just die to the Evolved Wall Breakers and they'll feel horrible. And Wall Breakers are one of the best cards to cycle in the game anyway. You can pull your opponent's units back, and because they're so fast moving, they'll never be able to catch up to them. So while you're cycling to the evolution, you're going to be getting positive elixir trades, and you're guaranteed a positive elixir trade when you get to it. And if opponents are down elixir trying to defend against evolved wall breakers, they're going to either overspend to defend and lose to the stuff that's going to be coming afterwards that you're going to be subsequently spamming at the river, or they're forced to take a ton of damage from the evolved wall breakers. In most decks that I can play them, I'll always choose evolved wall breakers over evolved firecracker and dark goblin, especially in rail recruits and bait bridge spam decks with Mega Knight. Number 8 is the Evolved Knight that fits in a lot of different decks, but it used to be played in a lot of cycle decks. Now it's typically played with beatdown pushes. If you have split lane pressure, you have a tank in one side, you maybe have Evolved Archer split, and then you have an Evolved Knight in the other lane, tanking for either Elite Barbarians if you got 3 Musketeers, or a range card. The Evolved Knight will be able to soak up so much more damage and force the opponent to drop units directly on it to stop it from moving so then they can actually kill it. The opponent's down elixir and they're having to defend against an Evolved Knight graveyard, or any high damage card behind it, usually they're screwed. Number 7 is the Evolved Valkyrie. It can solo full counter Piggies, Goblin Giant, and Giant. It has extra health, it deals extra damage to towers if it can get on top of it. It's one of the best counters in the game to Witch, which is the best card in the game. And it's one of the biggest bailout defenses in the game. If the opponent forgets that you have the Evolved Valkyrie and they spam too much stuff into it, they're going to be throwing elixir down the drain. It's one of the funniest things watching it wipe an Elixir Golem or Golem Night Witch push because the opponent just didn't know what you had in cycle. Number 6 is the Evolved Goblin Barrel. Even though you can decipher which one's fake and real now, you're still forced to take damage in more situations than you would like. If you're even elixir or down elixir and there's rail recruits and then a goblin barrel on both sides, or there's an ice spirit tanking for the fake goblin barrel while the real one is something that you have to respond to, the opponent will oftentimes have to dedicate their best spells to counter the real one, and then the fake one will deal damage because it's getting tanked for. It's just really difficult to defend if the opponent is playing like the Hypno deck that, baits out your elixir and drains it because everyone has a low amount of elixir, and then you have to have the perfect counters and have an elixir advantage to fully shut down the goblin barrel evolution. Even if you do shut it down, you kind of lose momentum and then you can't go on offense for a while, and they just keep throwing more goblin barrels at your face the entire game. Conceptually, it's a bit of a broken evolution, and it's going to be one of the strongest for a while because I don't see how they could nerf it or change it. Next is the Evolved Hunter, which feels straight up silly to see. When you watch this thing hold a Hog Rider, a Giant, a P.E.K.K.A., an Inferno Dragon in place, it just doesn't feel right. The opponent's win condition will actually get locked down and eaten alive by a 4 elixir card. It doesn't matter if it's 7 elixir. It doesn't matter if you defend and then you use it on offense with a Royal Giant, which is typically how you play it. And it's just so silly when this card is completely taking over the game. The only downside is it takes 2 cycles and then the third one's evolved. Players at the highest level will have to build their entire game plan about playing around this card, because if they spam into it at the wrong point, the game is immediately over. The functionality on defense and offense, locking down big pushes, makes the Evolved Hunter one of the most valuable teammates you could ever have. And since it doesn't die to Fireball, opponents will have to dedicate more elixir than it's worth, generating you positive elixir traits. You might think it's only played with Royal Giant, but that's just the best option. There's a lot of people that are experimenting it with Balloon and other cards like P.E.K.K.A., so I think there's a lot more that can be explored with this monster. After the Arrows nerf, Evolved Bats have just gotten better. The fact that they can overheal to force the opponent to arrow it is straight up stupid. There are win condition if left alone. They're going to be able to devour a lot of stuff like Royal Recruits on one side and then give you counter push immediately. If the opponent overcommits into it once, a lot of times they're going to lose to a tank. It's just a very strong evolution that you can consistently cycle to force out spells regularly. And then when the opponent is doing a 2-for-2 trade on your regular bats, you get the evolution, and it doesn't die to Ice Spirit. It doesn't die to any of the cheap cards that the opponent might drop like Electro Spirit. And they're like, wait, now it's healed up too much and I can't kill with my Zap or Snowball, and I don't have arrows in my deck. I guess I lose. Also very good if your opponent's running Cannoneer. They just will likely lose to this card as well. It fits in most decks since it's 2 elixir, and it feels like it's almost taken the place of the Evolved Skeletons, where the Evolved Skeletons have fallen from grace, and now the Evolved Bats are taking their place. In most cycle decks that you have the Evolved Bats, you're going to be playing them as an evolution. The third best evolution is the Evolved Ice Spirit. Whenever I play against pro players with this card, it feels like they always get back to it. It only costs 1 elixir, so the fact that they can cycle 2 of them and get back to a third as the evolved one, a lot of times they'll just save it for big pushes, stunning everything around it twice. And if you didn't know, it does a lot of damage too. It can straight up kill evolved archers if they lock onto them. And it's just silly how a card has the versatility of being able to kill a lot of important cards while also holding things in place for a long period of time. If you see any cycle deck in the game, there's a good chance that it will have this card, especially if it's defensive. All the Goblin Drill decks, all the Hog Rider decks, all the Miner decks are starting to play Evolved Ice Spirit. Especially since Clash Royale is geared up to be more aggressive and a little bit less skillful. There's a bunch of decks with Royal Recruits, Royal Giants being spammed at the river, and having the Evolved Ice Spirit allows you to dictate the flow of the game and not lose to skillless crap. If you play against good players with the Evolved Ice Spirit, you're probably going to be leaving the game in a fiery way furious, because it feels impossible to break through. Next up is the Evolved Cannon at number 2. Even though it got a radius nerf with its splash damage not hitting as much, if you're comfortable with the card, you're going to get value with it every time on defense. It can snipe firecrackers, dart goblins, anything that's stacked up. If the opponent's split lane pressuring like most people do, if they're good at the game, it'll kill everything. And it feels like a royal delivery all over the arena, able to hit ground and air. It's not fair. From cycle decks with Longbait and Goblin Barrel all the way to heavy beatdown decks with Electro Giant, every single deck in the game is considering running Evolved Cannon. Last season, 36 out of the top 200 players were running Evolved Cannon as one of the most played evolutions in the game. Even with many defensive buildings to choose from, Evolved Cannon stays on top. Despite Clash Royale nerfing Evolved Witch before it was even released, it stays unkillable as the best card in Clash Royale and the best evolution. I don't know what they were thinking, allowing it to heal up from every friendly skeleton that dies. If you got a giant graveyard that forces the opponent to kill the graveyard skeleton so they don't lose the tower, if people are using Evolved Mega Knight and knocking back the Witch will lose the skeletons, heal back up, and then the Mega Knight can't even kill it sometimes. Poison and Fireball heal up the Evolved Witch because they kill the skeletons and effectively do no damage. Basically, the most annoying thing is you can kill it, but you'll have to overspend on it almost every time. And when you do, the other part of their push, their split lane pressure or their next push will kill you. Healing when strong is utterly imbalanced. We've seen it with the P.E.K.K.A. as one of the best cards in the game for many months. We saw it with Bats, and we're seeing it now with Witch. Every time that Clash Royale adds healing as a new card, the card will stay one of the best in the game for many months to come until Clash Royale decides to eventually nerf it. If you enjoyed the new series, slap a like on the video, subscribe for more daily content, and have an amazing rest of your day.